Now, for majority of the season, Mecca seemed like he was someone who was in total control over his moves and everybody around him. So much so, we thought he had all his chess pieces in play, with Monet, Kane, Zeke, and even when he asked Kane to manipulate Braden to controlling Tariq St. Patrick, because he knew who he was. He did all his research on everybody, including Nene Stewart, because this is who Monet was 24 years ago, when they were childhood sweethearts, and she was the reason why Mecca came back to New York, as well as Zeke being their son. Not because he wanted to step into this vacant power vacuum in New York, but something which Mecca wasn't expecting, which derailed his old chessboard, was Lorenzo being released from prison, and this was a catalyst that kicked off a chain of events which completely changed the second half of the season for Mecca. So in this video, we're going to run through a 48 Laws of Power character analysis on the introduction to Mecca's character, but how he went from a man who was built to be this strong, strategic manipulator, and someone who looked like he had every move planned to the T, to someone who was destroyed in a single conversation with Tariq St. Patrick, who exposed him as this goat of global snitching, and arguably taking the title as Power's biggest snitch.
What can I say? You're like the goat of global snitching.
But let's start from the beginning, where we were introduced to Mecca in episode 1, with him asking Kane all these questions about Lorenzo and his family, even though he knew all the answers to these questions anyway, but he was doing his due diligence and testing Kane and his loyalty, for example with his GTG member at his hangar, and ironically, Kane actually called it in the very first episode.
You testing me, bro? Huh? I mean, we just had a good time in the spot.
Smell like a fucking nut.
But up until episode 9, Mecca was really good at using principles of Law 3, which was concealing his intentions. He used decoyed objectives and red herrings to throw Kane off his real motives and plans, and he used smokescreen tactics to conceal his real intentions, and the way Mecca did this was by telling Kane that he was looking to step into this power vacuum in New York, but he needed a real organization to do this. Now, this should have been alarming to us from the beginning, because he was someone who entered New York with a plane full of product, and he was supposed to be this big drug kingpin, but he had no soldiers to move his weight. And even when his product was taken by the GTG, which was set up by Tariq, his reaction to losing all his product was like he didn't care at all. He cared more about the bag because of what was inside, which were his snitch papers and Monet's ring. But one thing he didn't lie about was he was ex-military, and with him having a background at the School of Americas, he definitely had access to a lot of information, which allowed him to do research on those around him. For example, Lorenzo, Monet, and even Tariq St. Patrick, because he knew more about him than he first let on. But his facial reactions in both these scenes, when he heard and saw Tariq St. Patrick, was a hint that he knew who Tariq was. But unfortunately for Mecca, according to principles of Law 33, everybody has a weakness and a thumbscrew. It's just a matter of finding out what that weakness is. And in Mecca's case, there were two big secrets which were his weakness. One, that he was a goat of global snitching, which Tariq exposed, and the other weakness was Monet and Zeke.
I needed him. I needed both of you.
What about Zeke's needs?
Now, in essence, Mecca and Monet's relationship was very similar to Ghost and Angela's because of how they grew up as kids in love with each other, but separated at a young age. For Ghost, he actually had the choice, but he couldn't leave Tommy behind, so he stayed loyal and stayed in the hood, while Angela left for Chode. But he reconnected years later at Truth, ironically because of Dante Spears, which we'll get to later on in this video. Before Mecca, he had the choice of prison or the military, and of course he was going to choose the military. We saw similarities with how Ghost was pulling on the heartstrings of Angela with a favourite song from when they were kids, with Mecca rekindling and doing the same with Monet. And again, ironically, this was a song which had the lyrics of "Can You Stand the Rain?" And in BMF, we had Lamar singing "You Can't Stop the Rain" while he killed a certain character. And maybe the choice of song in episode 2 was definitely a foreshadow to Mecca's death. But as we come to the midway point, not only did he have Monet exactly where he wanted her, but he also had Kane where he wanted him. He was acting like this mentor and father figure, because this is something that Kane didn't have until Mecca showed up. Now, he also chose to kill Nuff in front of Kane, because he was exposing some of Mecca's secrets to Kane. He also beat up a civilian who was in fact Tariq St. Patrick, but if he really was a civilian, then police could have possibly come knocking and Mecca's cover would have been blown, because he wasn't supposed to be in the US for his safety, and also hence the heavy security. So Nuff was a liability and he had to go in front of Kane as a form of a power move to make him aware of what happens if he doesn't follow orders. The same goes for the chef as well. He killed the chef later on in the season because while looking for his favourite piece, he wandered into Mecca's room where he had his bag which had his snitch papers in, and he couldn't risk the chef being alive just in case he saw the papers. So again, he was killed in front of Kane when he very well knew that it was Kane who was the one responsible for the heist. But with Monet wanting out of the game, she accepted Mecca's terms in episode 5. But this was before Lorenzo was released from prison, and Diana is someone who inadvertently screwed Mecca's plan because she was the one who had Lorenzo released from prison, and this was the chess move that Mecca was not expecting to be played. This whole time he did his research, and Kane told him that Lorenzo was inside for life, and Monet wasn't expecting Lorenzo to be released either, so we saw Monet confused at this point with what to do, and we saw Mecca coming up with counter moves on the spot. For example, he was pushing Monet to leave Lorenzo, but when she saw how happy and together her family was, she knew that this was her family and not Mecca, so she told Mecca that it was over. Then we saw Mecca doing something that we never saw all season long. So far, we saw him taking a laid-back approach with everything falling his way with ease and manipulation, but we saw him going on the offense when he told Zeke that he was his father and changing his mind about meeting Lorenzo, and he did both, trying to win Monet back, but Monet was completely done at this point. But again, Diana inadvertently pushed Monet back into Mecca's arms because she was the one who blew up the secret about her relationship with Dante and Zeke being their son, which pushed Monet back into Mecca's direction, and Monet needed Mecca more than ever, because at this point, she lost Zeke to 24 years worth of lies, which was further fueled by Monet making Carrie's death look like a suicide. But what Mecca did to have Monet and Zeke lean on him even more was to keep Monet dependent on him, using principles of law 11, because the part of exercising power involves getting people to do what you want by forcing them, and he was very clever in the way he did this. He set up the shootout at the basketball court to make it look like Lorenzo was trying to kill Monet and Zeke, and having it look like they needed Mecca's protection. He was also the one who leaked the information about Zeke's age to the press and basically gave Zeke no reason and no purpose to stay in New York, giving him this Porsche to sweeten the deal to get on this jet. But Mecca's character took a complete turn from someone who's ex-military, strategic, and being in control to being the Goat of Global Snitching, and his character was completely destroyed in the space of 2 episodes because of both his weaknesses, Monet and his snitch papers both being used against him. Now Monet finding out who Mecca really was made her realize just how much she needed to be taken off the board, and she also realized that lovers make you weak, partners make you strong, which is why she went to seek for Lorenzo's help. But what fueled Monet into killing Mecca even more was when she found out from Tariq he was a snitch. But this conversation with Tariq revealed more than just how he was a snitch.
Now, the highest bidder at that time was a man named Lobos. Yeah. You see, I sold him to the feds for my freedom, Tariq.
And this coincides with the conversation that Tariq had with Cooper Sachs, because if it wasn't for Mecca snitching, then the Eastern District would never have opened a case against Ghost. And who knows, Angela may never have walked into truth in the very first episode of Power. But Mecca was from the School of Americas, which was actually referenced by Hugo in Season 3, Episode 6, by one of Felipe Lobos' men.
I thought it was School of Americas. So you brought me 2 thugs to torture farm.
That shit. School of the Americas, it was called back then.
But Mecca snitching on some of the biggest cartel bosses, including Felipe Lobos, made him the Goat of Global Snitching, and this is why he had to go. But why did it have to be Monet who killed Mecca? Because Monet was Mecca's weakness, and she was the only one who could get close enough to pull the trigger, similar to how Ghost would never see it coming from Tariq. Mecca said Lorenzo would never see it coming from Kane. Dante Spears never saw it coming from Monet, and this is why she had to be the one to pull the trigger. And just like that, Mecca was dead, and it really was either Lorenzo or Mecca. Both of them couldn't survive the season, because once the secret was out, time was ticking for one of them, and it just depended on who Monet wanted to side with, the father of her 3 kids, or Mecca, who is the father of Zeke, and unfortunately, it was Mecca who had to go. So with that being said, drop all your comments down below and let me know your thoughts on Mecca's journey, from being this strong manipulator to being destroyed in one conversation with Tariq St. Patrick and then being killed by Monet. So drop all your thoughts down below, and of course if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.